Good afternoon, everybody. It's Dion again. I'm so sorry for being so late, but today's been a crazy day. It's been a day full of work and everything else. But I wanted to make sure that I got out and reached out to you today. It is a wonderful Tuesday here in Atlanta, Georgia. Very hot outside. Beautiful day. So I want to talk to you real quick from the passage in Numbers chapter 13, last few verses, but I want to focus on verse 33. I may even carry it into tomorrow. But I want to talk to you real quick about how you see yourself. Not so much a self-esteem message, because I believe our identity and our esteem ought not so much be in self, but be in Christ. So we find our identity, our strength, who we are, what makes us in the one that made us. But when I look here at Numbers chapter 13, verse 33, it's something that rings out to me. It's full of so much stuff. But you may know, or some of you may not know, but there was a time when God had promised Israel something. He promised his chosen people a land that they would inhabit, the land of Canaan. And in chapter 13, we find out when God, through Moses, sent spies into the land. 12 spies, Joshua, Caleb, and 10 other dudes. I say 10 other dudes because you'll see when they came back, they were not good for the people at all. So they came back and they began to tell how great the land was, how awesome the land was, how full and lavish it was, that God had promised them this wonderful place and how good it was. So they saw how awesome the place was, and they saw how true God's word was about the place that he would take them to. However, regardless of God's promise and regardless of what they saw of God's promise, the report that they brought back was not only one that discouraged the people, but one that put what they saw in God's face. It diametrically opposed God's promise because of what they saw. How many times have you been afraid of what you knew clearly God was leading you into, but you were afraid because of what you saw when you went there? So here it is. We found out in chapter 13, verse 33, they come back and they say, the giants were there. The descendants of the sons of Anak come from the giants. And said, we were like grasshoppers in our own sight, and so we were in their sight. I thought that was huge, because it didn't say they saw us like grasshoppers, because many times we get off on what people see us as, or how they see us. But what we find out here in the Bible is the truth of the matter is they don't see us any way other than how we see ourselves. So we look here and it says that the sons of Anak were there, and we were grasshoppers in our sight, and we were in their sight as well. So what we find out here is that Israel saw themselves, at least the 10 spies saw themselves in a way lower than what God had made them. They saw themselves of a lesser degree than how God created them. And so it was how they saw themselves. They reflected upon themselves this crazy image that had nothing to do with God's creation of them. And they said, we see ourselves this way. So in turn, the sons of Anak, these giants, had no option, no choice but to see us the same way. Imagine if you and I and the 10 spies had gone back to Israel and said, we see ourselves how God created us. And it was because how we saw ourselves, Anak saw us that way as well. And so we need to begin, when we begin to go against opposition, when we look at people who are blocking our path, when we come against something that's obviously larger than we are physically or any other kind of way, we need to see ourselves how God said we were. We find out the Bible said that we are fearfully and wonderfully made. And the writer of that particular verse said, and that my soul knows very well. So it was a concrete fact that was settled for him. No need for argument, no need for convincing. He knew that God created me fearfully and wonderfully. So we need to begin to go into everything we go against, everything we try to combat, with a mindset on who God created us to be and how God created us to be. Seeing ourselves not as grasshoppers, but seeing ourselves as above, not beneath, the head, not the tail, and more than conquerors the way that God created us. If we can do that simple thing, it will move us eons, light years past any other mindset we could have, any other way of seeing ourselves. Now, that's it for today. But we'll be back tomorrow in this same chapter so we can look a little more about how God wants us to see ourselves and how God wants us to think concerning what he has for us. I love you. I'll talk to you all tomorrow. Bye-bye.